This is a reading of Imaginative Excesses by Theodor Adorno. Those schooled in dialectical theory are reluctant to indulge in positive images of the proper society of its members, even of those who would accomplish it. Past traces deter them. In retrospect, all social utopias since Plato's merge in a dismal resemblance to what they were devised against. The leap into the future, clean over the conditions of the present, lands in the past. In other words, ends and means cannot be formulated in isolation from each other. Dialectics will have no truck with the maxim that the former justify the latter, no matter how close it seems to come to the doctrine of the ruse of reason or, for that matter, the subordination of individual spontaneity to party discipline. The belief that the blind play of means could be summarily displaced by the sovereignty of rational ends was bourgeois utopianism. It is the antithesis of means and ends itself that should be criticized. Both are reified in bourgeois thinking, the ends as ideas, the sterility of which lies in their powerlessness to be externalized, such unrealizability being craftily passed off as implicit in absoluteness. Means as data of mere meaningless existence to be sorted out, according to their effectiveness or lack of it, into anything whatever but devoid of reason in themselves. This petrified antithesis holds good for the world that produced it, but not for the effort to change it. Solidarity can call on us to subordinate not only individual interests, but even our better insight. Conversely, violence, manipulation, and devious tactics compromise the end they claim to serve, and thereby dwindle to no more than means. Hence the precariousness of any statement about those on whom the transformation depends, because means and ends are actually divided. The subjects of the breakthrough cannot be thought of as an unmediated unity of the two. No more, however, can the division be perpetuated in theory by the expectation that they might be either simply bearers of the end or else unmitigated means. The dissident, wholly governed by the end, is today in any case so thoroughly despised by friend and foe as an idealist and daydreamer, that one is more inclined to impute redemptive powers to his eccentricity than to reaffirm his impotence as impotent. Certainly, however, no more faith can be placed in those equated with the means, the subjectless beings whom historical wrong has robbed of the strength to right it, adapted to technology and unemployment, conforming and squalid, hard to distinguish from the wind jackets of fascism. Their actual state disclaims the idea that puts its trust in them. Both types are theater masks of class society projected onto the night sky of the future, and the bourgeois themselves have always delighted at their errors no less than their irreconcilability. On one hand, the abstract rigorist, helplessly striving to realize chimeras, and on the other, the subhuman creature who, as dishonor's progeny, shall never be allowed to avert it. What the rescuers would be like cannot be prophesied without obscuring their image with falsehood. What can be perceived, however, is what they will not be like, neither personalities nor bundles of reflexes, but least of all a synthesis of the two, hard-boiled realists with a sense of higher things. When the constitution of human beings has grown adapted to social antagonisms, heightened to the extreme, the humane constitution sufficient to hold antagonism in check will be mediated by the extremes, not an average mingling of the two. The bearers of technical progress, now still mechanized mechanics, will, in evolving their special abilities, reach the point already indicated by technology where specialization grows superfluous. Once their consciousness has been converted into pure means without any qualification, it may cease to be a means and breach, with its attachment to particular objects, the last heteronymous barrier. its last entrapment in the existing state, the last fetishism of the status quo, including that of its own self, which is dissolved in its radical implementation as an instrument. Drawing breath at last, it may grow aware of the incongruence between its rational development and the irrationality of its ends, and act accordingly. At the same time, however, the producers are more than ever thrown back on theory, to which the idea of a just condition evolves in their own medium, self-consistent thought by virtue of insistent self-criticism. The class division of society is also maintained by those who oppose class society. Following the schematic division of physical and mental labor, they split themselves up into workers and intellectuals. This division cripples the practice which is called for. It cannot be arbitrarily set aside, but while those professionally concerned with things of the mind are themselves turned more and more into technicians, the growing opacity of capitalist mass society makes an association between intellectuals who are still such, with workers who still know themselves to be such, more timely than 30 years ago. At that time, such unity was compromised by freewheeling bourgeois of the liberal professions, who were shut out by industry and tried to gain influence by left-wing bustlings. The community of workers of head and hand had a soothing sound, and the proletariat rightly sniffed out in the spiritual leadership commended to them by figures such as Kurt Hiller, a subterfuge to bring the class struggle under control by just such spiritualization. A subterfuge to bring the class struggle under control by just such spiritualization. Today, when the concept of the proletariat, unshaken, its economic essence, is so occluded by technology that in the greatest industrial country there can be no question of proletarian class consciousness, the role of intellectuals would no longer be to alert the torpid to their most obvious interests, but to strip the veil from the eyes of the wise guys. The illusion that capitalism, which makes them its temporary beneficiaries, is based on anything other than their exploitation and oppression. The deluded workers are directly dependent on those who can still just see and tell of their delusion. Their hatred of intellectuals has changed accordingly. It has aligned itself to the prevailing common-sense views. The masses no longer mistrust intellectuals because they betray the revolution, but because they might want it, and thereby reveal how great is their own need of intellectuals. Only if the extremes come together will humanity survive.